We are delighted to be having two wonderful guests with us today. Dr. Christine Feldman, who is the author of We Are the Moderns. And just to let you know that this book is for sale if you'd like to purchase it. And there are also, I believe, some literature on your seats if you'd like to order it if we run out of copies here at the gift shop. We'd also like to welcome Ms. Sutcliffe, Pauline Sutcliffe, who was the author of Stuart Sutcliffe, and of course, and his Lonely Hearts Club. And Stuart Sutcliffe, as many of you know, was considered the fifth Beatle, and we look forward to hearing all of the dialogue that will ensue with this wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Christine Feldman, as Christina already mentioned, and I'm very pleased to be here today, and thank you so much for coming out. And I want to make a little bit more of a formal introduction for both Kevin and Pauline. And introducing to my left, this is Pauline Sutcliffe. She is a practicing psychotherapist and the sole executrix and owner of the Stuart Sutcliffe estate. Stuart's art and artifacts collections rest in New York between exhibitions. The most recent Sutcliffe retrospective was in Liverpool at Liverpool University in celebration of the city's role as the European City of Culture in 2008. Though she grew up in Liverpool, Ms. Sutcliffe now resides in Wainscott. And I will be asking Pauline in a few moments to talk a little bit more about her brother's life and work in relation to the theme of the exhibit here today. She is the author of The Beatles' Shadow, which came out in 2001. And also what is very exciting, if you're familiar with Ian Softly's film Backbeat that came out in the early 90s, it is now being produced by Carl Sydow as a theatrical production in Glasgow, and hopefully will soon come to Broadway. And also, if you haven't seen this documentary, Stuart Sutcliffe, The Lost Beatle, a BBC production, this also was distinguished and won the Creative Excellence Award in New York in 2007. As mentioned, I'm a lecturer in media studies at the University of New Hampshire, specializing in the culture, popular culture of the 60s and youth culture of the 60s. And the man of the hour and the next several hours, and I know we're both very excited to speak with Kevin today about this wonderful exhibit. I wanted to let you know that Kevin received his MFA from Bard College, and he has exhibited extensively not only here in the US, but also in Europe, in Sweden and France, among other countries. And he has also been an adjunct faculty member in fine art at various universities and colleges around New York, and also at the Lacoste School of Art. Kevin is also a musician and recording artist whose career started with the band MX80 in 1975, and he has received praise from illustrious music magazines such as Mojo for his 1999 LP, List of Who Lives. And Kevin now lives in Sag Harbor. So I will be moderating the Q&A afterwards, and Kevin has asked me to start with a few questions for him. And Kevin, my first question is pretty general, but it's going to be, I think, of great interest to everybody here. If you could explain the genesis of this project, how did this exhibit begin, and the work that has so much influence from the Beatles and 60s style and culture?
It sort of came on slowly, actually. The first painting I did was one called Revolver, and it was just a work on canvas, not very large, 60 by 40, and it was, I had taken, if you remember, the 45 spindles that they used to use for the small vinyl records, and I sort of turned it on its side, and it became this sort of this symbol that I liked, and I sort of blew that up, and I did this sort of canvas collage thing, and it was, I think I did that around 1983, and I showed that at There was a benefit called Live Aid. You probably saw some of the music that went with Live Aid with David Bowie and Jagger and a bunch of other people, Prince. And they had an art part of that they did an auction at Sotheby's. And, you know, they had some things by Bill Wegman and pretty good artists, you know, Warhol. And I was lucky enough to get included in that. And so this was a piece that was dedicated to John Lennon. And it was about 3 years, I think, after he died. And you know, for me, you know, growing up, the Beatles coming to America when I was hitting, you know, puberty, and it was just it was one of those things that really imprinted. In 1963, all this stuff was happening with my family as well as the country. Kennedy was shot. My parents were starting a divorce. I was hitting puberty. The Beatles landed, and it was just. So, you know,
perfect storm.
yes, that was that. That was that. So from that point on, I was in, you know, and so being somebody who's always been interested in history, I studied painting at Culver Military Academy, and a lot of my paintings have historical references. So, you know, I just found myself doing more and more what most artists do, which is sort of painting or thinking about stuff they're interested in. For me, it was the Beatles and all the other bands and that sort of thing that came afterwards. Mm-hmm. We were speaking earlier, and I was saying, for me, you know, the way the '60s are portrayed now in film and television, it's such a plastic, shrink-wrapped version of what really was going on for anybody that went through it. And so my interests were sort of the peaks and the valleys. It was, you know, the peaks being, you know, all the music and everything that went along with that, and the valleys were, you know, the systematic, you know, murder of all the liberal leaders, really. I mean, so it was a big mishmash. It wasn't all like peace and flowers. But the music is sort of what I'm concentrating on now. I find it to be better on my central nervous system than to think about assassinations and stuff all the time. So does that answer the...
Oh, absolutely. And I guess my follow-up question